Hello there, welcome back to my channel. Today is Monday, September 8th, and it's a fairly normal day. Please knock on wood or whatever this table is made out of. I'm hoping I'm not jinxing myself by saying that, but I wanted to bring you along with me because I have some updates to share. That's the story of every vlog, but specifically about social studies. Just recently, I had a comment on one of my vlogs and someone asked, hey, how is teaching social studies going? If you don't know, last year in 4th grade, I just taught math and science. This year, I'm teaching math, science, and social studies. I will explain why a little later on in the vlog, but I wanted to give you an update on how teaching social studies is going because just on Friday, I made a very pivotal decision. So we're gonna chat about it, but first I gotta get unpacked. So sadly, it was a little bit of a dreary weekend. The weather was just not the best. It was cloudy and overcast both days. It kind of rained off and on. However, it was perfect football weather, and this weekend was the kickoff of the first game, so we actually had Billy's dad over last night.
Football is like rock and roll. It's just boom, boom, boom.
And because of that, I felt like I got some things done. I also am starting to get into fall mode, even more so. I have been on a big spiced apple cider kick. It's not real apple cider, it's just like a little mix, but you mix it with hot water, and I have a electric kettle that I keep in my room for that. Last year I had a lot of apple cinnamon tea, but I haven't been able to find it recently at the store. So I'm gonna have this, just kind of brought it in to have on hand in my classroom. I also did some baking over the weekend and I brought in some treats for my coworkers, so let me show you those. If you have been around a while, you know that I love baking, and then gift giving is also one of my love languages. So I made these, they're like maple brown sugar blondies, and I just made one batch of them. I had enough for Billy and his dad to each have one, and then I packaged up individual ones for each of my team teachers, and then I have a box of them to give to the SLC team that I work with in my classroom. And the little tag I made in Canva, it just says, just a little treat for someone sweet. I hope you have a great start to your week, Emerson. And then I always put like allergen information on it, just in case. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these delivered. Then one thing I did over the weekend is prepped some new classroom cheers. I feel like this will probably be about it for our cheers, at least for a while. But if you missed my last vlog, I actually did a full overview of all of our classroom cheers. So I talk about how I use them in the classroom, how I display them, how I teach them to my students, and I go through every single cheer and show you what it looks like. Plus, I give you the editable posters for free. So go back and watch that vlog if you missed it. I'm not gonna bore you with going through them again. For math, I prepped some things for math intervention for the week, and I have like printed lesson plans, I have like word problems that we're gonna work through together, and some printed like practice pages, things like that. So I need to go through and organize those. But for science, this week we are focusing on measuring mass. I know in my Friday vlog, I talked about the investigation we are doing today. I'm gonna teach students how to use a triple beam balance, and they're gonna be measuring the mass of some cubes that are all the same size, so they have the same volume, but they have different masses, so that we can talk about how mass doesn't necessarily mean that the object is big or small. It can be small and still have a large mass. And our textbook, which we use McGraw-Hill, it kicks off the chapter, or rather the lesson this week, by talking about like metals. And so I was gonna ask my students, hey, does anyone have a medal? And then I brought in one that they can actually pass around, and it's a fairly heavy one too. It's from one of my powerlifting meets that I won a year or two ago. So I brought that in along with some more digital scales. I actually have 2 digital scales that I keep here in my classroom from Amazon. Basically, students are gonna measure the blocks using a triple beam balance and then also a digital scale. Ideally, they should get the same measurement, but it's also just kind of a good comparison for them. So I brought in my 2 scales at home, this is the food scale that I use when I'm tracking macros to weigh out my portions. And then this is the one that I use more so for baking because it has a heavier capacity. So if I have a big mixing bowl full of stuff, it will measure it. And what I love about both of these is this piece will pull out. So if you have like a big bowl and it's covering the screen and you can't see what it says, you can pull that out. But these are both the OXO brand. Not that anyone cares, but the last thing that I have is related to social studies, so let's talk about that. First, I wanted to chat about why I am teaching social studies this year. It essentially has to do with our scheduling and the number of minutes required for the various subject areas. So as a district, we have certain number of minutes that we have to teach every day for reading, for math, science, and social studies. And when the minutes change, we have to configure our schedule slightly different in order to meet those minutes. Last year, and most of the previous years, being departmentalized, the reading teachers would teach social studies to both classes. Because the number of minutes required for reading changed, it just wasn't possible in our schedule for the reading teachers to teach social studies. So as a result, every teacher this year is teaching social studies to their homeroom class. So I am teaching math and science to my homeroom students, as well as my switch students in the afternoon, but I am teaching social studies only to my morning group of students. Now, because the TEKS for 4th grade social studies here in Texas focus on Texas history, I am learning as I go because I did not know a lot about Texas history prior to living here. I mean, why would I? It's ironic though, because when I lived in Maryland, we taught Maryland history in 4th grade. So I knew Maryland history pretty well, but Texas history is new to me. So I'm learning as I go. Thankfully, one of my team teachers is a genius when it comes to Texas history. She knows so much, and she's so good at relaying the information in a way that's relatable for students. And I am enjoying learning it because there is so much connected to where we live. And so, for example, this next unit that we're starting, it's on Native Americans in early Texas, like before it was Texas. And we're learning about the names of some of the neighborhoods and the parks and the trails nearby, and they come from those tribes that lived here. So I am enjoying it. It's just a lot to learn. And so this year I'm giving myself grace and understanding that I am learning it and then teaching it. And I'm just taking it, a week at a time, a unit at a time. Now, something new this year for all of us, so even the reading teachers who have taught 4th grade social studies before, is we have these packets that I guess each school kind of had the option to opt in for at the beginning of the year, and we opted in to receive them from the district. So at the start of each unit, we get a packet of the pages that students will need. Now, because of that, at the beginning of the year, I said, okay, we're getting these packets that are printed, stapled, hole punched. I'm gonna put them into 3-prong folders. And then at the end of each unit, we'll just swap out the pages, but my students will use the same folder all year long. I put notebook paper in the back, so if we ever needed to take extra notes or write anything extra, we had it. Friday afternoon, literally when I finished recording my last vlog, I decided I'm gonna switch to notebooks because my team teacher who is planning the social studies is not deviating, but within this packet, we don't have time to get to everything, not even close. We only have 30 minutes for social studies daily. And so we're skipping over a lot, but then also there are some issues with the way that it's printed. For example, it will have pages printed back to back, but then they need to cut out cards, but they can't cut out cards because they need the organizer on the back. So we're running into some issues. As a result, on Friday, I said, you know what? I think I'm abandoning the folders. Yes, we only use them for 1 unit. It's fine. I'm gonna collect their folders and hold on to them just in case. But I'm switching over to just a traditional composition notebook, just like we use in math, just like we use in science. I feel like it's gonna make everyone's lives easier. At least that's what I'm telling myself. And I was crossing my fingers, thankfully it worked, that I had an extra notebook for me to have as my teacher version here at school, and I did. So let me go ahead and put the label on. This is something I did over the weekend, because once I made this decision, I said, okay, we're moving into notebook mode. I need to get these ready for my students. At the beginning of the year, my students all brought in 4 composition notebooks. We use 1 for reading, 1 for math, 1 for science, and then we had an extra one. In the past, they used it for social studies, but because we had these packets, we're like, oh, I guess we don't need that this year. Just kidding, yes we do. So I took home all of my students' extra notebooks that I just had sitting in an extra cubby. This is why I love keeping a tote bag at school. It comes in handy. I took home all of their notebooks and I got them labeled. So I printed out labels. These are the same labels that I have on their math and science notebooks. Got those all put on, and I also went with yellow tape because I was already using yellow folders. I just went to Walmart, got some yellow duct tape, and I just attached this to the side. So let me show you as I do mine. I just keep it on the side so that when their notebooks go in their little cubby bins, it's really easy for them to see at quick glance which notebook is for which subject area, rather than having to pull it out and like check the label on the front. So I literally just cut a little piece of tape like so, and obviously this roll will last me a really long time. And then I just put it here on the spine of the composition book. It lasts all year. That's what it looks like together. Just has the yellow. And then that way when they are all in the cubby bin, they can see pink is for math, green is for science, yellow is for social studies. So I did get that done over the weekend. I have those ready to pass out to my students. I also got the pages ready for their notebooks. Because we're doing this shift, I said, okay, we need to backtrack a little bit. First, we need a table of contents. So I printed up table of contents with all of our units. This will go on the very first page of their notebook. And then I printed out some pre-made notes that cover the things we did in Unit 1. That's another reason I wanted to switch to a notebook, because with the folder, since we're gonna take out the packets each unit, they're gonna go home, which is fine, but then students don't have it to look back on in class, whereas with a notebook, it's all in one place and they can look back on it, which I think is nice. So I printed out a vocabulary sheet from the first unit, and I did the pre-filled in one. So this is traditionally what I would give to students who are like absent and miss notes, also the ones that I glue in my notebook, but I printed these out for all of my students, so that way they will have it to look back on. The regions of Texas, so they have a map that they can reference. And then we had taken notes on each of the region in that packet, but just so that they have it, I did a set of these for each one. We drew little pictures at the bottom, so I just inserted clip art images. So that's the mountains and basins, the coastal plains, and then I put in parentheses Gulf, because sometimes like on our assessment, it was written as the Gulf Coastal Plains. That way they recognize that it's the same thing. North Central Plains, which looks like this. And then the Great Plains region, which looks like this. So today, I'm gonna tell my students, hey, surprise, we're switching to social studies notebooks. It'll take a little bit of extra time today because they're gonna have to glue all those pages in. We're gonna have a little gluing party, it'll be fine, but I think it'll be a very positive change moving forward. So before my students come in this morning, I need to glue all of those pages into my notebook as the example. That way I can show them the order, and just that way it's already done because I'm gonna be passing out all the pages. I need to organize those math materials for intervention throughout the week. I need to hang up those new cheers. And I need to like check email. You know, over the weekend, I try to check email here and there, but it never fails that I'll have a few emails sitting in my email inbox that I need to respond to in the morning, and then just getting myself ready for the day. I do have a team leader meeting after school, and I also need to stuff Tuesday folder. So we'll check in at the end of the day when all of that's done. We had another successful Monday in 4th grade. I feel like overall, it was a very good day. It was very run-of-the-mill ordinary, and honestly, at this point, I kind of treasure those days because the beginning of the year is so hectic. So when you finally get into a good routine, and again, I'm gonna brag on my students, but in the afternoon when we transitioned to Math Flex time, my students just did it like perfectly. Like I was so proud of them. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. They worked on an exit ticket. They dropped it off at my back table. I was working back here with students. Once they did the exit ticket, they put away their Learn books and they started working on iReady. Like it just, chef's kiss. It was wonderful. Speaking of Learn books, this is like an extra copy, and this is my teacher one. So this is where I work through all of the problems myself so that I have it as an answer key, and then I just feel like it's helpful to kind of work through and know what to expect. I think they call it internalization, but really it's just good teaching, knowing what you're gonna teach before you teach it. For science, we got through the investigation, which I feel like was a little bit of a miracle because we had to introduce like what is mass, we had to make predictions, we had to talk about how to use the triple beam balance, and then do the actual investigation. Now, we did not get to the kind of analysis questions at the bottom where we like communicate our results, but we got the investigation done and we got our data. So that's good, and that's a relief because then I can kind of take some of the materials back to the resource room. And to top off my great day just now, ending dismissal, I killed a scorpion that was like that big. So that was fun. But as I mentioned, I do have a team leader meeting to get to, and I have to stuff Tuesday folders. But after that, I think I'm gonna get out of here. The weather, it's like fall, like legit fall. It's in the 80s, which for here is very cool. In fact, I wore this out at recess, like a jean jacket, and I still was a little chilly, but I wanna just get some vitamin D, get outside, go for a nice walk, and enjoy the weather. So that's gonna be a wrap on today's vlog. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. As always, thank you for watching. I love you so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on, and I'll catch you in the next one.